at the beginning of this process, we weren't too sure on if we wanted to make this a Zoom performance, how we've been seeing them for the last couple months, or if we wanted to do something a little different, more maybe going into the film aspect of things. So Sally asked me to sort of be the assistant director, and I more took on the role of more of the film director. After sort of throwing out some ideas through production meetings, we kind of settled on this being more of a sound stage, and we have specific areas for the specific scenes. The process through it all has been sort of a tough one for us being theater majors and less like mass communication film majors. And so it's sort of a fun aspect to like try to figure out lights and sound and how we would go through the Zoom webinar system, and it's just been sort of interesting. There's also been a lot of minor details that we sort of forgot about, and we've sort of had to overcome at the last minute, just sort of like every theater does. Going from sound design, where we're wondering where location based and how the camera is going to pick that up through the mics and all these sort of different things. Another one was lighting. A lot of stage lights hit these cameras a little differently, so we're trying to manage which exact lights we should be using. There's a lot of details that it's pretty interesting and fun to figure out, and it's just a whole different world for us. Now, many things did stay the same. Going from the sound, the light boards, a lot of the stage hands, being on stage, it's sort of it's the same feel but different execution. We still have light cues and sound cues, and we still have the stage manager running the entire show. I think the main difference is just instead of looking at an audience, you're looking directly at a camera, and that camera could be faced upstage and not downstage. So many things changed, but a lot of things have stayed the same.
So basically what we did right before we started in-person rehearsals, we set up chairs that are 6 feet apart, and before and after each rehearsal, actors are in charge of sanitizing those chairs, and then they throw their sanitizing papers away, and they have to stay in those seats. They're not allowed to go sit in other places or walk around. So each of our sets are at least 6 feet away, and every actor that's not being videoed right in that moment is required to wear their masks, as well as the people behind the cameras, as well as the crew people on stage. And as soon as they're done with their scenes, they're required to put their masks back on. And each part of the set is sanitized before and after each use. The studio during the performances will be used for costume, and again, everything there will be sanitized. And then before each rehearsal or performance, the actors go into the studio, which is basically just a huge open space, and they stand 6 feet apart in a circle, and they all do their warm-ups there, and they don't touch anything, and they wear their masks as well. It was definitely an interesting experience. It was my first time stage managing, and it was my first time dealing with a lot of these issues. It was a very interesting time, and getting to interact with the filming aspects of it as well with the theater aspects, I can tell that it's definitely going to give me a lot of lessons for the future.
Early on in the process, we realized we weren't going to be able to have many stage hands on the set. So I'm a camera operator and a stagehand. So we have a cue sheet that tells us all of our cue lines to cue the actors and all of our camera and set transitions. On set, we have a lot of cables for various lights and cameras and speakers. So it is definitely a challenge navigating around the set. So we have to be very careful not to be seen, not to be heard, not to trip over things. So it's a challenge. I wouldn't compare this production to a stage production. I would say it is closer to a film set and a sound stage, which I've never really gotten to work on as a crew member or an actor. So that's been really interesting, learning both sides of a sound stage at the same time.
It's definitely a super interesting process. I never thought that I would be rehearsing scenes with other actors when I'm actually by myself in a room. It was hard to try to interact with my fellow actors while we were in little boxes on the screen. But it was definitely interesting and definitely necessary to be able to put these productions on safely and effectively. So I think there's a learning curve to it, but it's definitely, I think, very refreshing to transfer from Zoom back into in-person. And I think a lot of the actors that I've worked with, especially with Charlie Brown and even with Vital Signs, it was very easy we kind of clicked. Even though everything was on Zoom and we were all separated, when we came together, we still held on to what we knew from prior practices and things we've been in before pandemic. But I think it's definitely a skill that we should have, being able to rehearse on Zoom, just because who knows how long we're going to be doing that. And so I think it is a good skill to have. Yeah.
I knew that we were going to be limited in terms of how we were going to do it with Zoom, so I wanted to choose a show that was very Zoom friendly, and I thought it would be challenging and teaching our actors how to work with Zoom, and even the crew. We're just trying to figure out how to work with Zoom.
But what I started to figure out is I asked the actors who hangs out with you in your social circle, who's in your pod, as they say. And so when I found out who was in whose pod, I felt comfortable casting certain actors in certain situations and certain scenes. So that way they could take off their masks and be perfectly safe with the people they were with.
I think it's very challenging, but I love it. Like, it's making us all think outside the box and figuring out new ways to, navigate how we work in the theater. I mean, we have to do it over Zoom. It's the safest way right now, or we perform outside. So I think this has been an incredible experience. I have a lot to learn, and I hope to learn more.